Hi, I'm Eleni Lobene with Benison Kingdom Network, and this is Mental Wellness in the Modern World. Today, we're going to be talking about in-groups and out-groups. Now, it's a really simple term, and it sounds exactly like what it is. In the psychological world, there's this idea that people identify with groups, and that's your in-group. It could be based on really anything from your family, your nationality, your race, your belief systems, your sports teams, anything that makes you feel like you're part of a group, that's your in-group, definition of your in-group. On the other hand, you have out-groups. And out-groups are simply social groups that you don't identify with. Okay, so let's say you're a Nats fan because you're from Washington, D.C. You would not identify as a Cubs fan. Okay, that's a very basic, rudimentary explanation of in-groups and out-groups. Now, in-groups and out-groups are a simple concept, but they're very important because they influence how we behave. We tend to like people who are like us. We tend to feel more comfortable with people with whom we have things in common. And conversely, we tend to feel less comfortable often with people who are different than us, especially people who hold beliefs that are in disagreement or contrary to what we believe, okay? And that's okay to have in-group favoritism. I mean, to some extent, right? It's a very natural thing, incredibly natural. You see that, for example, immigrant groups to specific areas will tend to maintain affiliation with each other because they already have so much culturally in common. That is okay. That is fine to have groups with which we have community and social support and commonality. That's very healthy and very normal. Now, where things go awry is when we tend to have negative feelings towards people who are in the out group from us, right? So people who affiliate themselves with other groups or who are different, have different beliefs, when we tend to begin to have negative beliefs about the entire group of people simply because they are part of a different group, that's where we start to get into dangerous territory. And this is a very natural phenomenon. This is something that happens globally. It is a human thing. And interestingly, the Bible completely confirms this. Jesus literally spends tons of time talking about accepting people and not judging people and loving people who are what he would describe as the least of us or the least of these, right? Jesus is super aware of the fact that we tend to do this, that humanity tends to create these groups of us versus them. And in the worst case scenarios, these biases, this is what we would call like in-group and out-group biases, develop into discriminatory patterns where we actually have these innate biases that turn into bad behavior or harmful behavior towards others, where we actually show extreme favoritism and the absence of respect, for example, humane respect and behavior towards people who are different than us. Now, I think this is really important to talk about because in the Bible, Jesus spends time with people who we probably would not want our kids spending time with, for example, right? We might call them bad influences. He spent a lot of time with the prostitutes, for example, the people who were considered the bottom of society. He chose to spend time with those people and not just spend time, but love and transform those people. God sees tremendous value in every single individual, every individual. No one is beyond redemption, right? That is Jesus's story. He's for everyone. But us as people, we don't always see things that way. We tend to see people who we don't understand, that are different than us, especially when we're talking about social groups such as transgender groups. There tends to be a lot of controversy there. LGBTQ communities, sometimes, although worse in the past, arguably maybe, racial groups, differences in those types of groups. These differences can become all we see when we look at a person. And that is the opposite of what God calls us to do when we are interacting with other humans. He wants us not to be in a position of judgment, but to be in a position of love and to He challenges us to see other people the way he sees them, which is perhaps almost impossible, but it's what he knows that we need to work to try and do. And all we can do is attempt repeatedly to love and not judge, and to not continue to other and to outgroup, but to consider the humanity in people who are not in our in-groups and not like us. I'm Eleni Lobene, and this is Benison Kingdom Network. I want to know what you think about this. Who is in your in-group and who might be in your out-groups that you need to look at in a new light?